Oh, wait a minute. There you are. Good Tuesday to you, everybody. Income 785. Welcome to week. Boom. Bam. 13. The semester, the end of the semester, I should say, is upon us. How's everybody doing? You doing all right? As you can see, I'm committed to staying sufficiently caffeinated. Mm, much, much better. Okay. So in this video, we're going to talk about the readings that you're after this week. But before we do, a couple of really quick reminders. You want to hear something that's a little jarring? Hold on to your seat here. Yowie Zowie. August 16th is the last day of class. So what that means is coming up in the next 2 weeks will be the date for the completion of your semester project, and then the final exam. I was going to say the date for your final exam, but that doesn't make any sense, does it? Okay, so respectively, that is the one to the other. The completion of your final project is due. It'll be like August 13th. So we got about 2 weeks for that, and then the final exam will be made available. Because the semester ends on the 16th, what I'll do is I'll open it up on the 15th, and then it'll be due on the 16th. All right. And I look, if you've got anything by way of any special arrangements, I need you to get in touch with me right now, because the 16th is the end. And then after that, the clock starts to tick, and rather aggressively. I would add, from the registrar for me to get the final grades in. And so I have no room for stuff coming in after that date. So if if you're traveling, if you got anything you need to say, oh, hey, 15, 16, no bueno, can I do this early? Yeah. Just come and let me know. Okay. And we'll take it from there. Okay. So for this week, we're going to continue our readings in the Stephen Colbert and Fitkert book, When Helping Hurts. Okay. And unlike most of what we've read in this semester, this section specifically is going to be focused on not so much the how, like the Wilson et al. This is how you do a PR campaign. This is how you do a marketing campaign. This is how you persuade people. Think Cialdini. No, it's going to be focused on the why. Why should we be doing what we're doing in the nonprofit sector? And although I did not want to assign both books, because I thought, for the summer course, it was just too much by way of balancing everything. If you have an inclination to get involved with not-for-profit work and be it strictly on the communication side and or the fundraising side, which the two are like twin brother and sister, I strongly encourage you to go out and pick up a copy of Pallotta's Uncharitable. That is that book that you got just like the first chapter from, and compare what he says about the why of what we do to what Corbet says. Okay. And I think especially as Christian scholars in strategic communications, and awareness of that difference is important. As you get out into the marketplace, odds are you'll probably end up somewhere that's not faith-based. That's just the way the market is. The faith-based part of the market is a fairly narrow band. Okay. And if you do, I've worked at non-faith-based organizations, and both in communication and in communication/fundraising. And it raises an interesting dilemma sometimes about how you carry out the tasks that you're assigned. Because as a Christian, minus the why do I do this? That's first and foremost consideration in my mind as a Christian scholar and a Christian worker. That is, it's the means to the end. The end, the ends in and of themselves are not the starting point. It's how you get there that's of maybe even greater. I was going to say equal importance, maybe even greater importance. Okay, so that's what you're going to find in this reading. So, for instance, and this is really part 2 of the book. This first section is going to walk you through what is poverty. In fact, the name of the chapter of this first section is "Not All Poverty is Created Equal," because we, as you know, you read in the early parts of the book, we in the West tend to think of poverty in terms of material deprivation. But there was a very large survey done, I think, by the World Bank that he cites, a really interesting survey in which they asked people in poor countries what it meant, what poverty meant, what it meant to be poor. And surprisingly, the more common definitions, the core definitions, did not revolve around the material. The experience of poverty, yes, it was tied to a lack of material goods, access to wealth and other things. But the experience of poverty was a spiritual one, was a psychological one, was a social one. And simply, this, we have this old adage, you can't just throw money at a problem. Well, that is absolutely true when it comes to poverty. First, because the driving force behind the lack of the material wealth, whether that's money or in many cases it's habits, it's how people behave. The driving force behind that is not a lack of material. So just injecting material into the scenario won't change the patterns of behavior that continue the cycle of poverty. So in this section, chapter 4, you're gonna get a sort of a walk through the different sides and manifestations of poverty. All right. And what I've done for the discussion boards is, rather than, because there's so much useful material in part 2, is rather than pick out a single point and say, answer that. At the beginning of each chapter in this second part, there are a series of reflections. It's called initial thoughts. You'll see them when you open up the chapter. Okay. And then at the end of the chapter is a series of reflections and exercises. I've picked some of those that I want you to go through. So what I'm hoping that you get out of this is the opportunity to consider the entirety of the chapter rather than just this point on this particular page with this particular paragraph. You see what I mean? Okay. So if the discussion boards are the discussion boards, but if you look at them and you're not sure what it is that I'm asking you to do, and what I've done is I've said, answer question 1 on page, whatever. And that's the question that's in the exercises at the end of a chapter in this part 2. Okay. Then the second part of of the readings of this part 2, the chapter 5, is aptly entitled "Give Me Your Tired Poor and Their Assets." There's a great film called Poverty Inc. I think it's a documentary. I don't know that it's free. I know it's available on Amazon. I think there's a little charge for it, which, you respect the artists and the effort that goes into it. That's well worth your watching. I'll post a link for it in the announcement for this video. And it focuses on the side of not-for-profit work that rarely gets attention. And that is, what happens to people when you inject large amounts of free stuff into their world, and how organizations, and I'm sure they are with the best of intentions. I mean, there maybe there's a rare instance, and I've found, I'm trying to think, maybe one in my lifetime, of an organization that I thought, okay, this is just a scam. Okay. Most not-for-profit, especially aid organizations, really do want to do good. However, they fail to realize, right on the front end of their impact is, number one, that they're just a business like any other business, and they need customers, donors, to continue their work. So that actually comes first before the help that they intend to do. So they tend to pursue policies to keep the customers coming in and the customers happy, the customers being the donors. And they know this because they know they got to get the money. But what they don't understand when I say that they're unaware of the impact that they're going to have on the environment they're going into is how keeping a stream of customers and the money from the customers coming impacts their work. And then number two, what their work in the environment does, both in the immediate and long term in the environment. And I'll give you an example. Now I want you to, take this, listen to me carefully with what I'm about to say and take this in context of this whole discussion. I want to encourage everybody, do not give a single article of clothing destined for any African country. I don't care if it's shoes. I don't care if it's shirts. I don't care if it's pants. Stop. Why do I say that? Is that because, people in Africa don't wear clothes? No. All right. But it's because Africa as a continent, now, you cannot speak of it as a country because it's not. It's so different. Not only the difference between north of the Sahara and south of the Sahara, because north of the Sahara is overwhelmingly Arab and Turkish in its influence. South of the Sahara is overwhelmingly, the sort of very complicated amalgamation of native tribes and, Arabs and the Turkish peoples and the descendants of the Tartars have been there since, 6th, 7th century. So I guess, once you're there for almost, for like a millennium and a half, you're native. But anyway, you know what I mean. It's very different, but even in those different regions, it's very different. Okay. Culture, customs, language, very different. So don't do that. Don't speak of Africa as a country. Okay. But back to the point. Africa as a continent has some of the richest and most fertile agricultural land on the planet. Africa as a continent produces, in some instances, the highest quality raw materials from which clothing is made, namely silk, and I should say high-end clothing too, silk and cotton. But some of the best of the best. Now there are places in the East, in East Asia, where you get really good silk, but cotton, silk, and wool, they produce an enormous abundance. Those resources, the full capacity of them to stimulate entire sectors of the economy are the word I'm looking for is blunted or stunted. They're just blocked. They're jammed by a constant influx of free clothes. People in the markets throughout the continent in the various countries don't think to buy locally produced things because there's a constant line of boats and planes with shipping containers coming in with discarded items from Western countries. That intention to clothe the poor in Africa is harming the poor because it is retarding the development of the textile industry. And if you look back at the development of countries, I should say the economic development of countries, the development of textiles as part of an industrial development is a common theme. It's a common thread, no pun intended, in the industrial development. It happened in Europe. It happened in the United States. One of the anchor industries that gave rise to industrialization and the benefits of industrialization. Yeah, you got pollution and crowding and labor problems, et cetera. So yeah, okay. whenever you have a social and economic change, you're going to have disruption, and it's going to, change equilibriums. You're going to have problems you have to work out. So you got to get an 8-hour workday, and you can't put kids in factories. Okay, we get all that. But the anchor industry in industrial revolutions is textiles. And a constant stream of freebie, I'm just going to say it, crap, discarded items shuts that off, because markets behave the way markets behave. It's got nothing to do with people in Africa. Okay. If you addict people to a stream of free stuff, they never, even the conceptualization of, whoa, hey, we could make this, employ people, sell this and employ people, because when you sell something, it requires people to move it around. So you need a transportation part. It requires people to promote it. You need the marketing. It requires people to display it. You need shops and so on. So this creates this gigantic, outward spreading, job creating effect. Okay. If that never enters into the mind of the consuming public, all of that is shut off. So organizations that go in intending to do well, that are unaware of, number one, that they're a business and they need to keep their customers coming in, donors in, their money. That number two, what they do, driven by number one, give away free clothes, how that impacts the economy and the people over the long term, many are not aware. So the film that I'm mentioning, the documentary that I'm mentioning, Poverty Inc., takes a look at that phenomenon in the country of Haiti, which is, just off of our coast, down off of Florida, a country that I've worked in, and that you can see it. You can see the impact, the negative impact of nonstop not-for-profit work, and it's really sad. It's unsettling. So, this may be something that, like, for most people, like, never crosses their mind. Okay. And then finally, chapter 6 of this section is going to take a very critical look at what it means to actually help someone. In fact, the title of this chapter is called McDevelopment, like McDonald's, sort of a pun on that. Over 2.5 billion people not served. All right. So in other words, this sort of ties it all together, that simply throwing money in there isn't going to get it. And when you read someone like Pallotta that says, I believe in my lifetime we can get rid of this and we can get rid of that, and we just need enough money, he needs to sit down and read books by guys like Corbet, who say very plainly and very forthright, if throwing money at the problem was the solution to the problem, where we, today, we wouldn't have a problem. But it is not. Throwing money at the problem is not the solution to the problem. Because if it were, it would have worked by now. All right. So that's what you're in for this week. Again, I really love this text, so I hope you're enjoying the book. Okay. Be mindful of the conclusion of the semester in a couple of weeks. Final exam, I will post, let's, take a quick look at the calendar. Before the coming week, I'll post a review sheet with, a similar sort of setup to what you got for the midterm, just key terms and concepts that you really need to know. And yes, things that we discuss, that I discuss and you listen to in these videos, are fair game for examination questions, and that's how it was last time. Okay. All right, everybody. That's all the time that I wanted. I want about 15, 20 minutes. I see we're right at the 19 and something mark. Everybody have a wonderful week. I will post another video here coming soon in which we review your answers from week 12. All right. Remember, I am often thinking about you. I'm praying about you, and I'll see you on Blackboard. Bye-bye.